Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Simmons. I'm the co-founder of AstroGear Today, and today we have a spotlight video. We're spotlighting Skywatcher USA. We have two guests with us from Skywatcher, Jeff Simon, Director of North America for Skywatcher, and Kevin LeGore, the product specialist. And Jeff, you've been in astronomy for a while. You started off at Meade before coming over to Celestron.
Prior to that, I was a art director and creative director in a couple of different advertising agencies in Orange County, California. Then the Great Recession hit, and I was freelancing for a while. And then Meade Instruments needed an art director, and I've always been interested in science. I've always been interested in astronomy. It seemed like a great fit, and they thought so too. So that was my beginning as a professional in the astronomy industry.
Well, but I've known you for a long time, and I know that given a chance, you would know which end of a telescope to look through, really. You may have an interest in astronomy.
Well, and you're very correct, and that's why I have Kevin, because he very much knows which end of the telescope to look through.
So Kevin, we want to talk to you as a senior product specialist, and I've known you for quite a while too, before you went over to Skywatcher.
Mhm.
You've been in astronomy a really long time. Tell us where you got started.
So my mom got me a telescope for my ninth birthday, just kind of on a whim. I was never really into sports and stuff like that. I've done that, but it never clicked. Um, that was in 1999 when I got my first telescope, and it kind of started off slow, and then eventually, somewhere along the way, I really got into gear on it. Um, I through my early teens, I started helping out at the Challenger Space Center out here in Arizona. It was in Peoria at the time. It's since moved. And then met up with a group called Stargazing for Everyone. And then they were kind of the ones that ultimately introduced me to outreach. And I still work with a lot of the people that were in that group, even though the owner of that, it was a company. We did like corporate events and outreach events and all kinds of stuff. He has since retired. But many of us have branched into new groups, and we still continue doing outreach today. But my professional career, I've always wanted to get into astronomy professionally. I had a lot of people ask me how I was ever going to make a living doing it. I remember having people question me on that. So that's something I always wanted to do. I just didn't know where. So in 2010, I got my foot in the door with Lunt Solar Systems in Tucson, but I was just kind of monitoring support emails. They didn't have a massive online presence, so I worked kind of remote for them, and it was a very basic thing, but at least I had my foot in the door somewhere with somebody. And then in 2012, I had started to become friends with Scott Roberts at Explore Scientific, and he had informed me that there was a position open at Woodland Hills Camera.
Yeah.
So I moved over there because our mutual friend Daniel Mounsey was switching to somewhere else. So I went in and got hired there. That's actually where I met Mike through the infamous solar eclipse glasses of 2012.
We won't go into that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother can of worms. Um, Worked there till about May 2013, and then that's where I got picked up from Skywatcher, and I've been there ever since. But I also run my own outreach program called Focus Astronomy, and through there and my connections through Skywatcher in the professional world, in my outreach program, I've been able to work with a large variety of many companies for various reasons and made friends with the industry and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah.
So.
So you really have been involved with the industry all over, and part of that is Skywatcher itself. You guys are with Skywatcher North America. That includes Canada and the United States. But Skywatcher as a company is worldwide. So you have relationships with everybody else. But, we all see that you don't carry the same products that all the other regions do. Certain ones are available one place and not in other places. So how do you come up with what products you're going to carry in North America? This is for both you guys.
Well, I'll take a shot at that first. We So I started just a couple months before Kevin started. So I started in March, he started in May, and we've been working really closely together the entire time. Um, we decided early on that we did not want to bring in acromats or smaller, anything more in the toy range. We wanted to focus on the mid to higher range. First of all, it was a question of bandwidth. We only have so much manpower with Skywatcher North America, and dealing in order to deal with smaller, cheaper products, you have to sell a lot of them to make them worthwhile. But the more that you sell, the more manpower you need to do the customer service, to do the dealer support, to just to make it happen, and that it wasn't viable for us. So we made the decision, like I said early on, to focus on mid to upper range products.
So, but the other regions decide for themselves. But
Yeah.
Kevin, I understand you're in on the deal too, or Jeff.
Well, no, we are the distributor for Skywatcher in North America. So we make the decisions on what we're going to bring in and cover in those regions. The other regions, other distributors, it's like a McDonald's franchise.
Mm-hmm.
You know, everybody owns their own store, but they're kind of covered by the corporate umbrella. So UK is their own thing, Europe's their own thing, Australia's their own thing. So we are in communications with them, and we try to coordinate marketing materials and such so that the message that we're sending out as a company is consistent. But the day-to-day operations of each region are up to those particular distributors.
So when it comes to deciding on new products, new designs, this is a company-wide decision then, what's going to be made, right?
More or less. Kevin, why don't you handle that one?
Yeah, so each distributor kind of can pitch an idea to the factory and the engineering team about what they think might be viable, and then that kind of goes into the bubble at the factory if that's going to become a reality or not. There is a group of us that do talk occasionally about, hey, it would be nice if this product existed, or maybe we should look at going this direction. But ultimately, it's the engineering team at the factory that decides what becomes reality and what doesn't. Sometimes we will be pitched a product that they're working on, and we could be really excited about it. We could not be excited about it. So there's a lot of things that do become prototypes, if you will, that could even be to the point where they get released, but we shoot them down because it doesn't make sense for the market. Or it's a product that, at least here in our region or certain regions, we don't feel are viable, or are a good fit for our particular demographic where we're at, and we won't bring them in, where other regions might find that makes sense for them. So,
well, another thing, prior to COVID, there would be an every other year distributor meeting in China at the factory of all of the major distributors. And that gave us all an opportunity to interact with the engineering team on a regular basis. So there would be like these huge confabs where everybody's talking and we're looking at new product and potential new product and interacting with the engineers. So it's been a little different over the last couple of years. The interaction with the rest of the organization hasn't been as easy to do or at all. Hopefully that will ease up in the next year or two.
Well, in the different regions, I mean, Kevin, you mentioned that it makes sense for the market or not, and different regions have different ideas. So there must be a little pushing as far as new products and what you're going to bring out, because some markets, some regions are going to want something that they can offer. Other regions say, don't, let's not waste our time on that. Is that ever an issue?
They really kind of let us decide region for region of who carries what. We're pretty tight with some of the regions. If we have a product that's really questionable, we could all shoot it down together. But there's a lot of the more affordable products that we don't carry here in the States and in Canada, where some other regions might, maybe because they don't have the same offering as some of the, larger companies might not have the same footing over there. So it makes sense for Skywatcher to carry that product. We're here in the US and Canada, we have a lot of major brands in the region that kind of cover that lower end price point. So it doesn't make sense, at least from Jeff and I's perspective, to provide that similar product when we're just talking about the lower end stuff. So we'd like to keep up a little bit more aloft, if you will, and out of the, I like to call it the mud, of the less expensive products, and provide products that when you come to Skywatcher, you are getting a legitimate instrument. You're not getting a toy. We don't sell toys. That's not what we do. There are brands that sell toys if you want to go that route. But if you want to be serious about getting into astronomy and you want something that's quality, that might cost a little bit more, but at least you're getting something that's a real telescope. That's kind of where we like to play in at that point.
Yeah, there's in the lower end products, those are covered over and over again by not even just the established companies. There's a lot of China direct products that are now coming through Amazon and places like that. That's covered. We don't need to play in that sandbox. It's like eyepieces. We don't really do eyepieces have been covered and covered again. We don't need to do those, or cameras. That's there is a niche for us in OTAs and mounts that we know that we're doing a really good job, and we want to continue doing that.
Well, you do have a loyal following as far as that goes, and we've done reviews of quite a few Skywatcher products, all ones that are carried here in North America. They've all done very well, and Jeff, we've known each other a long time. If one of the reviewers turns in something and says this Skywatcher thing is a piece of junk, we kind of have to run it, but because that's what we're about, is doing them, fair and honest.
And we send our goons out to break legs, and and we never hear from them again.
Yes, well, that's why I'm so nervous on this podcast here. But I don't worry about it with your products. There are some others I know they may come back not so good, but that's our experience so far. My experience with Skywatcher products as well. But you have a loyal following, and these are the not necessarily advanced amateur astronomers, but the ones who I think either want to start off at a higher level or are moving on up to something more. You mentioned the big elephant in the room here, Jeff, with all of your products coming from China. There are some things that have changed in the last couple of years. And, we have trouble getting all kinds of things. Now, COVID there are two things that have happened from my talking with people in the industry. One, everybody got stuck at home for a while, so they all wanted to get into astronomy, which they've always wanted to do. And two, nobody could get any products to sell to them.
Yeah, it was the perfect storm of horrible.
Yeah, and I talked to one other manufacturer who said last month we sold more than we sell for Christmas, or had orders for more, and it's been happening all year, but they can't get stuff. So tell us about that, the supply chain. What has happened? Is it getting any better? What do you do about it?
It is getting better. There are still some bottlenecks in some places. As I understand it, computer chips and LED displays are still the big bottlenecks. But it is getting better. We just got a large shipment of our EQ6R mounts in, which was something that we were having a horrible time during the height of the supply chain issues. But yeah, so it's kind of been a really cruel joke. It's like now all of a sudden we're getting the inventory in just as the economy and inflation are going to kick everybody in the wallet. So it's it is what it is. After the last plague, we at least had the roaring 20s. We had a little bit of financial fun before the depression kicked in. This time we're just going straight from plague to depression. So
yeah,
thanks history.
Well, let's hope it doesn't go that bad. And there's always going to be this in every system. I mean, and the supply chain is far more complicated than people think. You don't just call up China and say, "Hey, give me this and that. I need it here and by next week." And that's the way things go. As soon as you disrupt it, things drop, and then they overshoot and back and forth. It's just a general thing. So, have there been any changes in what the designs are? I've heard rumors that Skywatchers come out with a different version of a mount, for example, because you couldn't get certain components to go into the one that was selling, so
Oh,
you just
yeah,
made
yeah.
another
Kevin, you
one.
want to talk about the RI?
Yeah,
Yeah, so
that's
we have
it.
a lot of our products coming out right now that have the I designation, which means Wi-Fi. Like our EQ6RI, that's just come out. There are other variations that are on their way. Really, the main issue with that is the mount itself isn't, nothing has changed on the mount. It's just because of supply chain issues affecting like the LED screens on the hand controllers. It's been very difficult to get controllers made, and because of that, we have mounts and other hardware that are essentially ready to go or could go into production, but they're being held up because of the hand controller. So, because now we have these little Wi Fi adapters, we could make a new product that doesn't have the delay anymore and it can ship out, but now it has a Wi Fi unit inside of it instead of a hand controller. So, it's not essentially a new product, if you will, but it's a variation to
Mhm.
kind of keep up with the times for what's happening. And in a way, it makes sense too, because there's so many people nowadays who want to do astrophotography. Maybe they're hooking it up to a PC or one of these like ASI Airs or one of these mini PCs that are out there that don't even need the hand controller. So it's kind of an evolution to where things are going anyway. Um, but we're trying to adapt to the way things are at the moment. And then it allows you to get your product out a lot faster because you're being held up by something that really doesn't need to be there for most people nowadays.
Well, and
And you could still
realistically,
get it as an accessory if you needed to.
yeah, and realistically, it's not. It's like something we've done before. We've got the Star Adventurer Pro Pack, we've got the Star Adventurer Astro Pack, we've got the Star Adventurer Photo Pack. So it's the same Star Adventurer mount, just with different accessory configurations. So the EQ6R is the same mount with a hand controller as the EQ6RI, which is the same mount with a Wi-Fi adapter instead of the hand controller. So it's just a slightly different configuration.
Yeah, and the first time I heard about this, we did a new product announcement about it, and the person who was writing that up for us said, "Yeah, this is their they had to go with Wi-Fi because they couldn't get hand controllers." And I thought, wouldn't they go with Wi-Fi anyway? I mean,
Well,
it
that
just
is actually a conversation we've been having for the last few years, is especially from the mid-range up,
yeah.
do people really want hand controllers for, I mean, do they want to pay the extra, what is it, $150 at the retail level for something that they're not going to use at all if they're doing astrophotography? So it's been a conversation that we've had in the past of converting over to strict Wi-Fi only. So instead of doing that, due to necessity, we're introducing this new configuration.
Yeah, it's interesting the way things develop. I mean, a lot of times, you make a step forward when you have to. Not maybe it's late, or maybe it was hard to do, but it's necessity. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting development.
Well, and on the plus side, this gives us an opportunity, like a soft open for a restaurant. It gives us an opportunity to see how the general public responds to this particular iteration of the product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So another thing that happened with the change, you guys, like everybody else, you couldn't get your product in. NEAF was canceled there, so we didn't have the big forum. The star parties were canceled. Everybody was kind of left wondering what to do. You guys pivoted to something that, Kevin, you've turned into a really regular and popular product, which is the What's Up webcast. Um, and you got a lot of followers on that. And it seems like it was a good idea, but again, that was kind of out of necessity as well. How did you guys decide to give this a shot?
Um, I know I had done some other podcasts, webcasts with some other companies. And I was like, well, that's kind of neat. Because it gives you like a complete, I mean, you guys are doing this right now, of course. It really gives you complete control of your messaging at that point where, and then when COVID hit, we suddenly, all these shows that we were going to go to and our public, display was gone. We kind of started looking at things, and I had the idea of like, what if we just did like a webcast, because it doesn't require us to go anywhere, but it keeps us in constant public connection with people. And then we could kind of control not in a bad way, but it would allow us to basically be able to deliver whatever we wanted to and talk about whatever we wanted to. And it's kind of evolved into that. Like at first, it's like, well, we'll do it every Friday and we'll just talk about whatever. Or we'll have a special guest on and maybe they'll do a presentation. We did that once and found out that wasn't what we wanted to do with guests. We wanted it to be more of a casual conversation like what we're doing now. So it's evolved, and we've actually invested quite a bit into it now to make the production value better and smoother, and really kind of learned the hard way with electronics on what you need to make things work. But now it's turned into this thing where, yeah, we have almost 100 people every Friday tune in live. And then the advantage of that, too, is we can also discuss our products at times, or, working with our products. And it gives us an ability not only to have content for people every Friday, but if it has anything to do with our own product, our tech support team can be like, oh, we did a whole overview on that particular thing. So people can then go back and be like, well, I want to know how to do this. Well, we did a whole episode on that. Or just any topic in general, because a lot of times the topics that at the time, now we have Jeff and our marketing guy, Jared, kind of throw topic ideas, and we have guests throw topic ideas. So it's not just me anymore. But a lot of the topics that I chose to cover were things that I found people would call in regularly through tech support on. Or it's like, I want to get a camera. What do I do here? I want filters. What do I do there? And it was kind of just, how do I document something that people have questions on all the time?
I think
And now we have content for that.
I think it's important to point out, though, because you're talking about Skywatcher product and stuff, but we made a decision very early on that we're not just going to talk about Skywatcher product,
right?
Because then it just becomes every Friday for an hour a Skywatcher commercial, and I cannot think of anybody anywhere that wants to subject themselves to something like that. So we made a very early decision. We're just going to talk about the industry. We're going to talk about all the products in the industry. We're going to talk about all of the people in the industry. Because otherwise, you can't necessarily trust what we're saying unless we're willing to talk about even, we've had a number of our competitors on to talk about their product. Los Mondi and Stellar View are the first two that popped to mind that we had on talking about this stuff. When AIC finally happened this year, we did a 1-hour walk around and talking to everybody that was willing to talk to us that were displayed, and about what they're doing, and Prima Luce and some of their stuff. So yeah, it again, it was an opportunity out of necessity. We're not going to be able to go to NEAF. We're not going to be able to see the people who we generally get to talk to in these venues. What other venue can we use to stay in touch with our audience?
Well, you also cover topics just of general interest to the community, the astronomy culture, education and outreach stuff. These are things that I know Kevin has been a part of, and we, of course, things that I've been doing for a long time. And so it's of general interest to people who are into astronomy. I think a chance to learn more, not just about your products, as you say. Is that right?
And we have, at least for me, I have a unique position to have the privilege to be able to get a hold of a wide variety of equipment, or have had a wide variety of equipment. Like one I'm working on right now is like night vision astronomy. A night vision unit costs $4,000. So there's a lot of people that maybe might be interested in it, but they don't really know all the details about it. So, at times, and that's how I learned, was I had people who were willing to loan me an eyepiece or a filter or a telescope and would let me kind of learn it and figure it out. So I have a lot of hands-on experience. So for me, if I have the opportunity to give back to someone, whether it is actually getting something into their hands or at least getting the experience put together and let us talk about it, that's what I really like to do with the webcast, is covering topics that people might be interested in. And I'm in a position to where, with a little bit of finesse, we could get a hold of that for a little bit, and we'll do an episode on it because people have questions on it and want to know more about it, and a lot of times I do too. So and then we have it documented. So
well, we're doing the same thing essentially at AstroGear Today. I mean, we're cranking out over 100 reviews of astronomy projects of all kinds each year now, just in our second full year of operation. And they're not long, detailed ones. They're sort of the same idea as what you're doing. Let's take a look at it and get a general idea. And then people can say, that looks like it's right for me. I'm going to look into it more depth without having to read 4,000 words on cloudy night by somebody who
and then it's like legitimate source of information at that point, which is another reason why we wanted to do the What's Up webcast, because I had so many people who would call and being like, I read this online, I heard this from someone, and it's like, well, that's like half right, or no, that's wrong. So it's like, for us, it's like we have complete control over the message. And any topic that we do cover in the What's Up webcast, I don't really want to talk about it until I have a real good understanding of it and I can talk on authority with it, because I want to make sure who's ever watching, whether you're beginner or advanced, is getting the most legitimate, correct information possible. Because I don't want to hear that, oh, I heard this from you guys and that's wrong, and whatever that might be, because it happens way too much. So I'd rather talk on a topic of authority than just willy-nilly opinions.
Yeah, we're with you there. I've been involved in astronomy for outreach primarily for 50 years now. And it has always been true, even when there were like 3 brands of telescopes available, you get different opinions from everybody. There are 3 different types of telescopes available, and if you ask 10 people, you get 10 different suggestions. I don't know how you come up with all these different ideas. And people are still making their own now. And so that's, something I like to cater to as beginners. You guys are not a beginner scope in the sense of, you got a small scope behind you there, Kevin. Not necessarily a beginner scope. This is a high quality scope. So, but the beginners you will look to, you do have products that beginners can come to and know they're getting the right thing.
Yeah, no, we've got like our Heritage series, which is like our tabletop Dobbs. There's a 130 and a 150. They're both parabolic telescopes, so it's a real Newtonian that both mirrors column, which is a big thing for me. When we do get particular Newtonians that are more affordable or cost effective, there are some out on the market where you can't align both mirrors, and I don't think that's a good way of doing things, because at some point someone's going to buy it, they're going to learn how to observe with it and use it, and then they're going to want to upgrade, and they're going to go to another version of it, and they're like, well, now how do I do all this? I'd rather you learn the right way from the get-go. So any product for me, especially in the Newtonian world, that doesn't have complete collimation of primary and secondary, I don't want it in the lineup, because I feel like that's not teaching the beginner the correct way from the get-go on how to do it. Yeah. So our Heritage series, they're real Dobsonians. They're just little. Of course, we have our Star Adventure GTI, a little go-to back there. It's a lot of people think because it's small, it's a beginner system. That's not really the case, as we all know, but it gives you really advanced features for photographers and maybe a more compact system for astrophotographers. So we have a lot of products, like even our little 72, which is riding up top. That's a ED APO 72. Those are a few $100s for that little refractor. Yep. But it's designed with the astrophotographer in mind, because that's what everybody wants to do nowadays, is take pictures. So we want to make sure everything that we have in our lineup is, whether it's for a beginner, and none of ours, I think that's a bad way of putting it. You know, we have beginner product. No, we just have quality product across the board. It's just the price tags vary depending on its size and capability.
Well,
And
that's it. You know, I've
and
seen.
features. And one of the things I wanted to point out, because Kevin was mentioned about the parabolic mirrors, it's like, yes, you've got a Virtuoso 150 that fits on the tabletop, but it's using the same optics as our full-size 150 Dob. So even though you're getting a smaller package, we're not skimping on the quality of the optics, which is what you really want to buy anyway. Okay, and then Mike, you were talking about Skywatcher and the level of quality that we're known for, and that's something we've worked really hard from the very beginning to establish the quality reputation that Skywatcher has. When I started, Chinese products didn't have the greatest reputation because for years they were kind of, they were Chinese products. But Cinta in particular has spent a great deal of time developing quality optics. The only problem is now it's kind of come full circle because you have these China direct companies that are selling through Amazon and other venues that are not really, I mean, they're bargain products, which is fine, but you're getting what you're paying for. So it's causing us to need to reestablish the quality aspect of the Skywatcher products in the marketplace.
Well, I think that's well known amongst amateur astronomers who know what's really happening here. But the low quality stuff, as we mentioned before, and Kevin talked about, has always been something of a problem. As far as getting people into it, not getting discouraged.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you know what you're getting into, that's one thing. But if you're buying one of these products thinking that, like, oh, I'm going to be able to go out, I'm going to see these nebulas, I'm going to see these galaxies, and it's just not the case. That particularly in astronomical products, you are getting what you pay for the most part.
Well, which is really an innovation lately with the mass production, the machines that can grind out optics and turn out good stuff all the time. It was not really the case when I started out. My first scope was a 4.5-inch Tasco on an equatorial tripod, which at the time was actually a really good scope, but I didn't know one thing from another. And, it took me 45 minutes to get the moon in it the first time because I didn't know about aligning the finder with the main OTA. But I learned all that stuff myself, and I agree. It's good to know these things. So, what do you plan to do with the webcast in the future? So this came about sort of as convenience, necessity, something to try out, but it's well established now. What are you going to be doing? Just keeping on the same, or any
funny part is we've been doing it. We're in the teens, 100 and teens right now for episode. I think we're out to 118 episodes right now, whatever the count is, but we're over 100 episodes in at this point. There's a lot of times where so the way it works is the beginning of the month, the first Friday, is what's up for the month. So that Friday is immediately taken care of every month. And the last Friday of the month, we have a special guest on to talk about their specialty in the field of astronomy. And those, we normally have enough people lined up to fill, because that's only 12 people a year. It can be difficult sometimes, but for the most part, we have the month pretty much filled out for the guests. The hard parts are everything in between, where I wouldn't call them filler episodes or anything like that, but they're topics that aren't just like given. And that's the ones where we have to come up with a topic. And we've kind of done a lot of the major stuff that it's like filters and solar filters and all that fun stuff. So now we're having to kind of and stuff does pop up, or a new product pops up to where, yay, we can do a video on like our new little telescope we're going to do one on is the Quattro 150, our little 6-inch f4 Newtonian.
Right.
That one, that's a good one. It gets its own little episode. But eventually, we've already talked about the large majority of our product line. So when something new pops up, that's really cool. And then the webcast also gives us an avenue to announce new product the way we want it to. I know some of the stuff moving forward, I think we've talked about doing is like on-site webcasts. Like, I would love to start doing webcasts from an observatory. Like, hey, we're at Lowell today, and we're actually talking to someone, but maybe we're in like the Clark Refractor Dome, or like on like really cool stuff. Or maybe, I mean, Mike, this would be easy for you to help us do, but do something at Mount Wilson under the 100-inch or the 60-inch, and actually talk to some, you know, historian or something up there about the observatory, but we're on site and we're able to shoot that. I think that would be really kind of neat. And then, of course, another thing would be kind of advancing our guests who get to come on. Maybe we're getting people who are more well known. As we like, one of my main goals, and people think it's funny, I would love to get Seth MacFarlane on. I think that would be awesome. And not so much because I like Family Guy, but I think it's really cool to have someone who is such an icon for the public in a comedic way, but his vested interest in redoing Cosmos and his work on Orville, stuff like that's kind of a big deal, because it's like, people, I love watching the Orville, but somewhere someone's going to be inspired to get into space, whatever, because of his efforts. So I'd like to talk to him on that, or people of that caliber. It'd be cool to get on.
I think that's what's really interesting to me. Things that I've written over the decades and interviews and things is things like, you know, the story behind it. Like, he really is big into astronomy, and I knew the new Cosmos was in the works, you know, at the time, and I thought, seriously, Seth MacFarlane? But it is interesting because astronomy is something that everybody has an interest in. I joked about Jeff not being involved in it, but you know, he's a sci-fi guy to begin with. I started, people ask me all the time in interviews when I first got interested in astronomy. I can't remember that far back. I don't know. My memory goes back to the 50s, and it's probably better than my memory of last week, or maybe this morning is at this point. But you know, the stuff I've done, astronomy is universal. Everybody's interested in it, and you talk to some, you know, I've met celebrities who are into astronomy at star parties, or had them as guests on webcasts and things. So it really is something universal, and I think that cultural aspect you can see is of interest to me. So you know, I've done a webcast with Tim Russ. Tuvok from
he's one of our ambassadors.
He's one of your ambassadors, so there you go. And he's a cool guy, and you know, a few others like that. So anyway, so there's a lot of possibilities there. I'll throw all my ideas.
I just think stuff like that's cool, because you have a lot of people who look up to certain individuals, and when they're like, oh, they think that's cool, well, I think that's kind of bridges this gap, because astronomy nowadays is really kind of interesting. I mean, even today we're talking the day that James Webb showed off all their latest pictures. It's something that I feel like rides just below the mainstream media interest. But when they do come up, like there's a full moon, we all roll our eyes. That's like, it's a blood moon. But on the other side, that's getting people to get out and take an interest in the night sky, even though it might drive us nuts, but it's a thing. So I think, like you said earlier, people are always interested in astronomy, and it's just about kind of tapping that vein to get people to see, like, it's more obtainable than you might think, but you just need a little nudge to do that.
Right. And people can talk about it a little bit more. You know, I worked at Griffith Observatory in the 70s running the telescope with the guy who went to Johnny Carson's house to help him set up his observatory. And before that, it's also in the 70s, you know, we had Dave Garraway, who's somebody might even be before Jeff's time, predecessor of Johnny Carson, who was into it, and a lot of people since then. So it's an important thing, and it's one neat thing that's happened in the last couple of years. It's sort of this boom in astronomy. So let's, you know, before we finish off, let's talk about those things that come up once in a while. Today was one of them. If you're watching this sometime in the 24th century, this was the day, we're recording this, that the James Webb Telescope released its first images. We got a sneak peek at the deep field yesterday, which was my favorite, but they've got a total of 4 they released as of the last time I checked. And there has been enormous interest in this. I mean, the president of the United States announced the first one yesterday. I think they could have done a better job on the
Just
webcast.
a little bit.
A little bit. Uh, but they made somebody's music famous by repeating it so many times. Um, but you know, it's one of those big events. What's going to happen? Jeff, you've been in this industry a while, and well, Kevin too, is starting with retail sales as well. Is this going to be a big boom, do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, every time there's an event, every a Mars lineup, or an eclipse, or anything that gets people interested, a comet, you're going to see an uptick first in interest, and an uptick in interest equals an uptick in sales. There's already been an organic growth in interest in astronomy just because of the pandemic. People needing to find some hobby where it keeps them away from other people, but still satisfies an intellectual curiosity. So astronomy, I think, Kevin, we said at the very beginning of this, astronomers were the hipsters of social distancing, because we've been doing it from the very beginning.
Oh yeah, it's astronomy historically. I've known several couples who where one spouse was kept away from the other all night way too often for the other spouse's liking, and did not go well. But yes.
Yeah. But yes, to follow up, I think that we're going to see a lot more interest, especially as more and more photos come out. I think the same thing happened when Hubble first started releasing images. People just like, oh my God, that's what's out there? I had no idea. And I think that's a lot of the reaction to the first image that came out yesterday, where you're seeing the thousands of galaxies in this very small window of the night sky. And I think you're going to see that interest happening again. And I also think, we were talking about this earlier, that so the James Webb Telescope images are coming out, but they just re-upped the CERN super collider, and they're doing, so you've got stuff happening on the quantum micro scale, and now at the James Webb on the macro scale. It's a great time for science. So I think overall there's going to be just an increased interest in anything scientific.
Well, maybe you should consider carrying some amateur cyclotrons.
We're working on that.
Okay, good.
Create your own black hole in your own house.
You're the first and the last on your neighborhood.
Yeah, we're not liable if your house is destroyed. Really tiny text.
So with that, I guess we've covered a lot here today, and I think astronomy in general, it really does draw people in, and it doesn't take a James Webb telescope or a Hubble telescope to do these things, because Kevin and I know from years of doing public outreach that oh my God moment is a large part of why we do it. And people look through the telescope for the first time and see the moon, or Jupiter.
Yeah, just the moon that you see every night in the night sky. The first time someone sees it through a telescope, and you see the look on their face and the reaction they have from through a little 50 millimeter achromat.
Yep.
But it still changes the entire perspective of what you're looking at.
It suddenly, they first of all, they start noticing the moon. They think of it as a planet. They realize what's out there, and they start looking at the sky for the first time, really, and recognizing where we are in the universe. This is not a trivial thing. It changes people's lives quite often. So it's really a good industry. In my case, nonprofit, in addition to the AstroGear Today. It's a really good area to be in. It's a good space, so to speak.
Yes.
So with that, I want to thank you both for being on here for this video. This has been great. I've known these guys for a long time. It's really been a pleasure to be able to bring them sort of the other side of them to everybody else. here, and be sure and take a look at what's up because Kevin does a great job with that.
Yes, he does.
And of course, this is brought to you by AstroGear Today. We want you to check out the website. Doesn't cost you anything. There are a lot of reviews there if you're just getting into astronomy or you think you're going to move up to something, but you're confused just like everybody else is because there are so many products right now. You can see Skywatcher products and all of those other products that companies that we don't need to name on this particular video, but you know who you are. They are out there. And we cover pretty much everything. And of course, our biggest problem has been with the supply chain too. I keep bugging these guys to get me samples for reviews, and it's been really tough. But anytime there's a new product or we can do it, we'll do that. And it's astronomy is the industry is one big happy family for almost the entire part. And we all work together, and we always have. So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you to both of you guys, Skywatcher USA, Skywatcher North America, Jeff Simon, Kevin LeGore, two of the good guys that I've enjoyed working with for so long.
Well, thank you for having us. Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Been a pleasure. Thank you, and clear skies to everybody.
Thanks.